The graduation gown felt heavy on my shoulders as I stood in my aunt and uncle's living room, diploma in hand, waiting for something I'd never received. Pride. Instead, my uncle glanced at me with disgust and said, "Well, at least the ugly one finally finished something." My aunt laughed, actually laughed, and added, "Good luck finding anyone who will want you now." I was 18 years old, and those were the last words my guardians ever spoke to me before they threw my suitcase on the porch and locked the door. I had nowhere to go and $300 to my name, but what they didn't know was that their cruelty would become my fuel. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story from. I want to know how far it has traveled, and maybe you are living near my city. Let me go back to the beginning. My parents died in a car accident when I was 7. My mother's sister, Aunt Brenda, and her husband Uncle Keith took me in, not out of love, but out of obligation. From day one, I knew I was different from their daughter, my cousin Melissa. She had their eyes, their smile, their affection. I had a room in the basement and a list of chores that never ended. Melissa was everything they wanted in a child. Pretty, popular, charming. She got piano lessons while I scrubbed floors. She got new clothes while I wore thrift store hand-me-downs. By the time we were in high school together, the difference was painfully obvious. She was the girl everyone knew. I was the girl no one noticed, except when they wanted to be cruel. "Why do you even try?" Melissa once asked, watching me put on lip gloss before school. "You'll never be pretty like me." I didn't answer. I just kept getting ready, kept surviving, kept hoping things would change. They never did. If anything, it got worse. Uncle Keith made comments about my appearance constantly. "No wonder you don't have a boyfriend," he'd say at dinner. "Who'd want to look at that face every day?" Aunt Brenda would nod in agreement, sipping her wine like his cruelty was just casual conversation. I learned to keep my head down, to make myself invisible, to count the days until I could escape. High school became my prison, and graduation was supposed to be my parole. Instead, it became the day they decided I was no longer their problem. That night, sitting on the porch with my suitcase, I called the only person I could think of, my best friend Kylie. She lived with her grandmother across town, and when I explained what happened, she didn't hesitate. "Come here, now." I walked 3 miles in my graduation gown, dragging my suitcase behind me, and when I arrived, Kylie's grandmother, Miss Patty, opened the door with tears in her eyes. "Baby, you're home now," she said. And for the first time in 11 years, I believed someone actually wanted me around. Miss Patty let me stay in their spare room, the one that smelled like lavender and old books. She didn't ask for rent or expect me to be a maid. She just asked me to help with groceries sometimes and to keep trying. "You're going to do something great," she'd say, pouring me tea in the mornings. "I can feel it." I wanted to believe her, but all I felt was anger. Anger at my aunt and uncle. Anger at Melissa. Anger at a world that judged people by their looks and decided I wasn't worth loving. I got a job at a diner 2 weeks after graduation, working double shifts to save money. The work was exhausting, standing on my feet for 10 hours, serving people who barely looked at me, cleaning tables until my back ached. But every paycheck went into a savings account I opened at the local credit union. I had a plan. I didn't know exactly what it looked like yet, but I knew it involved getting far away from this town and becoming someone no one could ignore. I studied at night, taking online courses in business and marketing, using Miss Patty's old laptop. 2 years passed like that. Work, study, save, repeat. I didn't go out. I didn't date. I didn't waste time on anything that didn't move me forward. Kylie worried I was working too hard, but I couldn't stop. Every time I thought about slowing down, I'd remember Uncle Keith's voice calling me ugly, and the fire would reignite. By my 20th birthday, I had saved $8,000 and completed 3 online certifications. I was ready for the next step, but I didn't know what it was yet. Then Miss Patty got sick. It started with a cough that wouldn't go away. Then came the hospital visits, the tests, the diagnosis that made my heart stop. Stage 3 lung cancer. Miss Patty, the woman who'd saved me, was dying. I took leave from the diner and became her caregiver, the way she'd cared for me. Kylie and I took turns sitting with her, reading to her, holding her hand through the pain. And in those final months, Miss Patty taught me something more valuable than any degree. She taught me that beauty isn't what you look like. It's what you give to the world when no one's watching. Miss Patty passed on a Sunday morning in October, holding both our hands. At her funeral, the church was packed with people whose lives she'd touched, people she'd fed, helped, loved without condition. The pastor said, "Patty didn't have much, but she gave everything." I thought about my aunt and uncle's big house, their expensive cars, their cruelty disguised as honesty. They had everything and gave nothing. Miss Patty had little and gave it all. I knew then what kind of person I wanted to be. And it wasn't them. After the funeral, I made a decision. I was leaving town. Kylie was starting college in Atlanta, and I decided to go with her. We packed everything we owned into her beat-up Toyota and drove south with nothing but hope and Miss Patty's life insurance money she'd left us to split. Atlanta felt massive, loud, overwhelming, but it also felt like possibility. I got a job at a marketing firm as an assistant, making copies and fetching coffee. It wasn't glamorous, but I was in the room. I was learning, and I was hungry. My boss, a woman named Veronica, noticed me after 3 months. "You're wasting your potential answering phones," she said one afternoon. "I've seen your notes. You understand this work better than half my team." She promoted me to junior marketing coordinator, and suddenly I had real responsibilities: campaign research, client presentations, strategy meetings. I worked 16-hour days, absorbing everything like a sponge. Veronica became my mentor, teaching me not just the work, but how to navigate corporate spaces as a woman. "Confidence," she'd say, "is the best outfit you can wear." By 23, I was managing my own accounts. By 25, I was leading a team. And by 27, I'd saved enough to start my own consulting business. I called it Bloom's Strategy, named after the way flowers grow through concrete. My first year was brutal. I lived off ramen and worked from a tiny apartment with unreliable Wi-Fi. But I landed 3 solid clients, then 5, then 12. Word spread that I understood brands, that I could take struggling companies and make them relevant again. My calendar filled up. My bank account grew. And slowly I became someone I barely recognized in the mirror. Not because I looked different, though I'd learned how to dress well and carry myself with the confidence Veronica taught me, but because I felt different. I wasn't the girl on the porch anymore. I wasn't the ugly high school graduate who'd been thrown away like trash. I was a business owner, a strategist, someone clients trusted with their futures. I hired a team, rented an office in Midtown, got featured in a local business magazine, and through it all, I never forgot where I came from. Or who'd told me I'd never be anything. Years passed. My business grew. I spoke at conferences, won awards, built something real from nothing. I dated occasionally, but never seriously. I was too focused, too driven, and maybe too scared of letting anyone close enough to hurt me again. Kylie said I had walls made of steel. She wasn't wrong, but those walls kept me safe. They kept me moving forward. And by the time I turned 29, I'd achieved something I never thought possible: financial security, professional respect, and a reputation that reached far beyond Atlanta. Then one afternoon, 11 years after graduation, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello." Silence, then a voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. "Is this you, Aunt Brenda?" My stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. She laughed nervously. "Your cousin found you online. You've done well for yourself." I didn't respond. "We were wondering," she continued, "if you'd be willing to help Melissa. She's going through a rough patch financially, and we thought maybe." I hung up. My hands were shaking. The audacity. After 11 years of silence, they called asking for money, not to apologize, not to check if I was alive, but to use me the way they always had. I sat in my office, staring at the skyline, and felt something shift. The anger I'd carried for so long started dissolving into something else. Pity. They hadn't changed. They were still the same people who valued appearances over character, who measured worth in dollars and looks. And I'd spent 11 years proving they were wrong about me. I didn't need their validation anymore. But curiosity got the best of me. I looked up Melissa on social media. Her life looked nothing like I expected. 3 failed marriages, a string of business ventures that went nowhere, posts asking for prayers and donations. She'd peaked in high school and never figured out what came next. Meanwhile, Aunt Brenda and Uncle Keith's posts were full of complaints about money, health problems, and how nobody appreciated them. They'd aged badly, not just physically, but in spirit. Bitterness had hollowed them out, and I realized I'd escaped more than just their house. I'd escaped becoming them. A week later, I received a message on LinkedIn from Melissa. I know this is weird, but I wanted to reach out. I'm sorry for how we treated you. I was young and stupid. I'd like to talk if you're open to it. I stared at the message for 3 days before responding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let them live with the consequences of their choices. But another part, the part Miss Patty had nurtured, wanted to see if real change was possible. I agreed to meet for coffee. Melissa walked into the cafe looking nothing like the confident girl from high school. She looked tired, worn down by life in a way I recognized. We sat across from each other in awkward silence until she finally spoke. You look amazing, successful, I'm happy for you. I nodded. Thank you. She twisted her coffee cup. I treated you horribly, we all did, and I've thought about it a lot over the years, I'm sorry. Her apology felt genuine, but I wasn't ready to forgive. Why now? I asked. Why reach out after all this time? She looked down. Because I finally understand what it feels like to be on the other side, to be the one people look down on, to struggle and have no one care. Tears filled her eyes. I lost everything. My marriages failed because I never learned how to love anyone, including myself. Mom and Dad are broke because they spent decades living beyond their means. And I realized the only person who actually made something of themselves was the one we threw away. Her words hung between us. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part just felt sad. I didn't offer her money. I didn't offer her a job. What I did offer was something more valuable, advice. If you want to change your life, I said, stop waiting for someone to save you. Stop blaming your circumstances. I started with $300 and a suitcase on a porch. You have more than that. You just need to decide who you want to be and work toward it every single day. She nodded, wiping her eyes. We didn't hug when we left. We weren't family anymore, not really. But maybe we'd found something better. Mutual respect. I never heard from Aunt Brenda or Uncle Keith again, and I was fine with that. Some relationships aren't meant to be repaired. Some people are in your life to teach you what you don't want to become. They taught me that cruelty reveals more about the person giving it than receiving it, that external beauty fades, but character lasts, and that the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's living so fully that their opinions become irrelevant. I didn't need them to see my success. I only needed to see it myself. At 30, I expanded my business to 2 more cities. At 32, I bought a house with a view that took my breath away every morning. At 34, I started a scholarship fund for kids aging out of foster care, kids like me who needed someone to believe in them. And every year on graduation day, I think about that 18-year-old girl on the porch, scared and alone. I wish I could tell her that everything she's about to endure will make her stronger. That the people who hurt her will fade into background noise, that she'll become more than they ever imagined. Today, I run a multi-million-dollar consulting firm. I mentor young women trying to break into business. I speak at events about resilience and transformation. And when people ask me how I did it, I tell them the truth. I got angry. Then I got focused. Then I got free. Not everyone gets a fairytale family, but everyone gets to decide who they become despite the family they got. My guardians called me ugly and threw me away. 11 years later, I'm thriving. And they're still exactly who they were. Small, bitter, and forgettable. I won. Not because I'm prettier or richer, but because I became kind. And that's the beauty they'll never understand. The story you have just heard is a powerful real-life story that happens to so many young people in our world, one I have witnessed through the lives of others. I'm telling you to wake your minds to compassion, resilience, and how we should never let someone else's cruelty define our worth. If you were in my position, would you have forgiven your family or walked away forever? Would you have helped Melissa or let her face her consequences alone? I want to know your opinion because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. God bless you, and may strength carry you through your hardest days. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I am leaving you with one of the most beloved channels, King's Revenge Vault. I am sure none of my stories will fail to inspire you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.